Alright, hello and welcome back to the PTK Ropai interview series. If you're not familiar, this is part 2 of our first interview in which we've been talking with some student leaders at our college about their experience during COVID-19. As I stated last time, we're closing in on a year right now. And it's, again, surreal. I sound like a broken record, but that's more hysteria than anything. Not to freak you all out. So picking off where we left off on the last part of this interview, we're now going to begin the educational aspect of it. How was it navigating Zoom, WebEx, Google Hangouts? We know that this was, not only difficult for students, but it was difficult for educators as well. Credit where credit is due. Educators working at a reactionary capacity is difficult. And for many of my educators, and I believe many of our students' educators, we want to say a big thank you for continuing to stick with education this far out. It's not necessarily the job you guys signed up for. In no way is this intended to be inflammatory to any of our instructors. However, we do want to give our honest opinion on what our experience was. We know everybody's human, so there is a capacity for our performance to wax and wane on all ends, not just on both the students and instructors, and we're going to deep dive into that right now. So thank you all for catching my little blurb right now, and I'm gonna pass it off to the video. The video is not a person, I don't. You get what I'm saying. It's just a kind of a social thing. I think I find a lot of students to do, be like, okay, we're just gonna be a student, we're gonna be normal. But it's really hard to kind of cover that up and to just perform well once we're going in with just this immense stress, or whatever the state of our mental health may be at the time. So once this kind of rolled in, because we started this at the right after spring break, what were you guys' kind of initial fears? Just looking at your class schedule, looking at your workload for whatever college courses you were taking, knowing or experiencing just the first stages of this lockdown.
Well, I can say right when this thing started, none of the professors knew what to do. And we were on spring break when they told us they were not opening classes back up. And so I frantically started emailing professors like, what are we going to do now? I mean, how are we going to do our work? How are you going to? And at first I got no answers from a lot of professors because I'm sure they were in shock just like we were. So, because they're human. And one thing I had to understand at the beginning was that they're human. I give them less leeway now, but at the very beginning, no one knew how to transfer their classes online. And I understood that, sure, we did get a couple of extra weeks of really doing nothing. So I was like, it was a little bit of an extended break, but it was stressful because all I can think of is now I'm behind in my classes. Are they going to count this semester? Am I going to have to do an extra semester all over again? There were all these thoughts that went through my head, and I think the thought that the whole semester was going to get canceled and I was going to have to do it again was the most stressful part, But once, the professor started replying back, it's like, okay, we're going to do this. Then I started feeling a bit more comfortable because I knew that school was going to start again at some point. So, but that was my biggest thing right there.
That, and then also when they had given us the option of just having the pass-fail score.
Yes.
Because I need at least a B to get into the program that I'm in currently. So I was like, what are you talking about? I need this grade as this grade, this number. But other than that, for me, it was, as a student through the Disabilities Resource Center, I have services provided to me. So when we got switched and changed to this online environment, my first concern is, do I still have my services? How is this going to work in this new environment? And it was tricky. And even this semester, we've been in this quarantine for a while, even this semester, it's so hard and it's still tricky and the services still aren't perfect or really helpful. And so that's probably my biggest heart-wrenching concern about it. Mm-hmm. That happens.
Mm-hmm. And Brittany?
Mine's is it got complicated fast. It was like we got this extended break because they needed to give teachers enough time to figure out what to do, how to do it, and go to this, I think a community hall was what the last thing I remember from an email. And I literally went into 3 weeks of school after that and still couldn't find one of my professors. On top of that, I was screaming out for, how are you going to start up a new thing? Tell us all to be online, but you don't know what type of internet I have at home. You don't know what kind of bandwidth, what kind of computers I have. And then on top of it, you have to remember that some of us are parents. You know, back in the day, a majority of your students were parents, and we are sharing one computer, and you're telling me to be at school at this exact time now, where I wanted to be in person already. And I also have to have 2 other kids. So we're sharing one computer, and once again, there's no communication, there's no help. And I'm asking for it. I think I even got denied. I literally wrote a letter saying, hey, I need help. I need a computer, you know, and I got denied. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, I had to tell his teacher, you know, we're gonna have to pick who's more important. I would have them miss school because I needed to take an exam, or still trying to find this missing teacher, and then calling the school, but the school didn't know what to do either. And then it was like, come on, like you can't, I know we're all suffering here, but if you want me to succeed, then I need the right help. Like when you open back up, you have to have, I felt like they were gonna be more prepared for it. And I thought it would be easier, I'm not gonna lie, because I've taken online classes before. And I'm like, okay, it's online classes. There's nothing wrong with that. Touche, let's just do it. Let's roll it out. No, it's completely different when you're taking your sciences and labs online. You know, that's not that experience. You're not in person. These things that you're supposed to be touching with your hands, doing in person it's not adaptable. And it's definitely not adaptable if you have one of your teachers not even show up. So you freak out, you call for help, you start the trail because now you're afraid that, you know, nobody's answering you, nothing's happening, and you go from there. And people have to remember, sometimes it's not just you. I'm dealing with my teachers, I'm dealing with my kids' teachers, I'm dealing with my husband's work, you know, different things like that. Like now everything's just changed. Like how are we supposed to adapt when there are so many questions but no answers? And I know I was upset with my teacher at the longest, but I'm like, this all affected us really bad, and I understand that this went down. And then like Pocahontas was saying, you had the Passfail, and I'm like, how's that gonna work? Because I can't go to ASU and be like, here's my Passfail credit. Are you going to accept it? Are you going to be able to transfer this credit over? You can't just tell me I'm going to give you a Passfail for this semester and don't think about what's going to happen. I'm not here just to be a 2-year community college person. I have a BAP program. It's on there. So how's that going to work? And then asking that question, you haven't even set up the people I'm asking you to answer it. All they know is it's Passfail. I can't help you with the rest of that. Like and for the longest, I think it even went into like December, and I'm asking these questions because I don't give up when people still don't get it. And then, like I said, after you just try to figure everything out on your own. Like, I don't even know if some of these classes I want to repeat, or I found out ASU will take some of those, some of them, but it's the biggest thing, once again, that was lost was communication, and that was the biggest struggle, because when I needed help, there was no communication.
And I definitely think, you know, starting with that pass-fail system, that was pretty, I imagine that's been a universal issue for kids everywhere. Because it's not even just like, will the college accept it? I imagine if you're something on like financial aid and maybe you already have like a penalty against you, if you're in an honor system and you're on a penalty, or if you just have a scholarship that is to maintain a particular GPA, you might have to opt for a pass if you're getting something like just a B in a class because your GPA might be at a borderline. I know I myself had to do that to maintain my 3.5. I'm like, I had a perfectly serviceable 89%. And I remember sweating bullets because I know you specifically cited ASU. You know, I mean no disrespect to them. I don't want to necessarily say they dragged their heels, but you really had to talk to like different types of faculty just to see where that was at the time, which I know had to be scary for anybody who had to consider that pass and fail system. And along with that, I definitely know that your PC situation is something that a lot of people experience at the college, you know, and I think that does definitely speak volumes to the unique community college experience, because we ourselves are not necessarily as homogenous as, say, a university. You know, university, we have these large pay gates, so there's likely an expectation that we would buy our own computers going in, we'd be housed in the same areas, we'd be eating, you know, similar things and provided the same services. But as a community college, we all come from different walks of life, especially since we're given education at a much lower price. But conversely, that means that students as a whole, that the student body, many of us were pretty likely to not have access to quality internet, to devices that could handle our coursework, be it even just a laptop or even a phone, for that matter. I know I had to support a student through this last semester, and it was tricky. I had to, like, not even just use PC. I was like, I think you have a Glendale course, so we're going to try them too. Just kind of ping-ponging back to see what we can get together. And, you know, all credit where credit is due to everyone in the Maricopa District for doing what they could. But those first months were, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on what both of you were saying, the internet thing, because I didn't even think about that, but that was a barrier for me because I didn't have internet because I had a phone. So, and I also had campus to go and sit in the library and do my homework. So when everything went down, I was struggling to find affordable internet, first of all, because I didn't have extra money for an extra bill. Because if I had that extra money, I would have already had internet in my house.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that, okay, there's no other option, I had to figure out, where am I going to take this extra money out to pay this internet bill? Because I don't have the money to pay a $70 for a internet bill, you know, and that became daunting. And it was one of those things where for a minute, I had to go in front of the library downtown to sit and use their internet for a second. And then luckily someone had sent me an email that said, oh, Cox Cable is doing internet for $29 for students. And when I got that $29 internet, as a lot of people realized, my laptop was freezing the whole time. It was not good service. So I still wasn't able to keep up with my studies, you know? And so that was something that I think, like you all said, affected a lot of people, because this is a bill that we're in community college and we could barely afford a lot of what we already had. And to put an extra bill on us, and there was no saying that, oh, we'll help pay for that or we'll help cover that, that was difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember, they did offer certain programs, like if you wanted to, for me, it was like, I was upset about the Passfail, and a lot of people kept telling me, you know what, we also do the pandemic forgiveness for your credit, so we'll go ahead and give you this cash for dropping the class right now because of the pandemic. And I'm all like, okay, so I guess either way it goes, I'm just gonna take this class and apply it, because it's not like cash, hey, here's your money back, here's cash for you to take a class later on during this time at our school only. And they had to understand that. I'm like, okay, that's still not gonna solve the future where I have issues with technology or getting into the class. So I was like, I'm grateful that you're able to do that at that time, but I don't think you thought about what other consequences go with that, if that's the right word, because I with what happened to me, I did have to wind up taking that because too much stuff came at me at once. The pandemic really hit hard on me. But it sucked because even when I had to, because they don't tell you anything, they're like, here it is, there you go. And then you go and use it for the fall and you find out that it was never used, and you wind up using more financial aid, and they're trying to pull out the loans and put it on your account. And I'm like, hold up, you told me I had cash to use, where is it at? Oh, I'm sorry, you're supposed to call and register and ask if you could apply it to this semester. And I'm like, where is this at? I have your messages. You did not tell me that when I did this. Like, it's not, once again, the communication wasn't there. I've gotten into arguments with some professors, some like a dean, a head chairman, over like my education. And I'm like, I don't understand why it's so hard to give me education. Like, I'm just asking for education. I know I've had problems before. I'm not going to say everything was peachy then, but it was super hard because I'm on the phone trying to call you with no answers because everybody's calling. I'm over here sending messages constantly, and you're telling me somebody's going to reach back out to me. 2-3 months go by. Nobody's reached out to me. So I'm doing it again. And then I'm having to start a trail because nobody's believing that I'm calling in, because so many people's calling in and there's no trail that they're keeping themselves. And it was just so much. It kept going and going and going. And then I think any student at that time would want to just give up. And you can only do so much as a student. I don't know how your school runs. I don't know the stipulations. I trust everything that this person in front of me is telling me. So the one mistake that they make can affect my future for forever. And that's what that did. It started a whole different pandemic for school than it did with just COVID. So it was truly difficult. Like I said, I wanted one thing during this whole pandemic to work right, and I figured that would be my education. And personally for me, that's literally what my therapist has told me, that my education is my strong suit. And that got taken away from me. And I shut down. I shut everybody out. I deleted all my social media. I did all that because if I lose the last thing that's keeping me up, I'm not saying that my babies and everything else, but for my personal mentality was school. And you took that away from me, you destroyed me. And I'm trying to mend those pieces still. I'm not saying that I'm doing better like I was doing before. I'm still struggling, but I'm making it.
And that's really good to hear. I think that aspect that you're talking about in regards to the kind of purpose and identity we assign with ourselves to education, and especially with something like community college, is something that I think was overlooked this whole time. The beautiful thing about community college is when we're going in person, it feels like a very even playing field. It feels like, whatever the case may be, we're just here to pursue an education. And the difficult thing about something like this was it worked very quickly to alienate students, not just in the communicative capacity, but issues like internet. It kind of reminds me of the stories like I used to hear my godmother talk about. She was, the child migrant workers, and she used to talk about that sort of like classification based on income that you would experience. And it's not necessarily that any maybe faculty were doing that. I would absolutely hope that's not the case. But there's this sort of like pulling you away from it feeling when you're the only one who can't connect to a lecture, when you're scared to turn on your camera because you're gonna look choppy and talk like a robot. I used to kind of get that when I would like make it to class every day, like sweaty with a skateboard in my hands, because I didn't even have enough for the bus. And suddenly, when I finally find the ebb and flow of it, where I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm just a person here. I'm just trying to get an education, and that's all that matters to people. That's taken away too. So I definitely feel for you on that, Brittany. It was distressful in how that sense of community we had as a college sort of was uneasy for a minute, not by any malicious intent, but just by the nature of how the world was at the time. So with all that in mind, I know